like here with electric vehicles here in the kingdom. Now we're going to turn our topic a little bit to the heart of urban transformation happening everywhere, the modernization of parking, of tolling, and of curbside systems. As cities expand and mobility habits shift, the way we manage parking and curb space is ever-changing and undergoing major revolutions right now. This panel is going to explore how smart curb technologies and integrated systems are transforming the urban landscape. I'd like to welcome to the stage, please, Dr. Christian Gasparic, our moderator, and the panel.
All right, so parking and curbs are in some ways the antithesis of mobility, if you will, because they don't move. You probably have noticed, but they're really important foundations of mobility. We typically think of them as spaces, and that really, I think, is a good way, and the conference organizers, I think, have summarized the title of this session very well by thinking about spaces, access, and mobility, because parking, off-street, on-street, curbs, the place where parking happens and other things happen, really are a very important binding tissue of mobility. So we have parking, we could have logistics, loading zones, micromobility, charging, all things happening, competing for space as well. So we would today discuss about these things. How can we look at parking today? We'll paint a vision in the future of what might be do differently in parking in these connected areas. How can it help mobility? How can it help cities, design and enable movement? And we'll do this with our panel here. First, I would like to introduce them very briefly. We have Asayel AlQahtani here, who is working with the city of Riyadh, with the municipality, to be specific, with an entity called Remat Al Riyadh, that is driving a part of the mobility in the city on municipal assets, and parking is a very important part of that. And Asayel is leading that and will for sure tell us a lot about the ambitions plans that Remat is undergoing through right now. We have Gregory next, who is the Director of Transportation and Parking for the city of Hoboken, and we just had a very brief chat. If you don't know where Hoboken is, it's part of the New York metropolitan area. It's part of the state of New Jersey. And it's a very, very urban, dense community. And I'm sure you will tell us a bit more about it and the challenges associated. We have then from another part of the world, from Cali, from South America, Felipe Montoya, the Executive Vice President responsible for the financial and commercial side of the Cali public transport system. And finally, we have Philippe of Beeck, who is coming from a different perspective, coming from the private sector. He was leading as the group CEO, APCOA, one of the biggest parking operators in the world. My name is Christian. I'm a partner with Kearney and the global lead for the Kearney Advanced Mobility Institute. And on a personal note, I would say quite actually exciting about parking. I've done quite a bit of work in that space, no pun intended. And I'm also in the UATP part of the parking working group. So I think we have probably almost every continent on the world represented here on the stage and different perspectives, and this is great. Maybe just as a quick warm-up, if we think about parking as a revenue tool to make money, as a traffic management tool, or as a public space tool, in a very short answer, what do you think is the most true right now in the city that you live in? Maybe if we start with you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Christian and everyone. So basically, we look at parking as a service that should be given to the people and to the public realm. It's basically to enhance the traffic flow, to reduce the congestion, and for sure having revenues. It's basically revenues being the catalyst of having these costs that will be produced on that curb and on that assets. It's gonna be for sure a self-sustained assets. That's how we see it as a revenue. From another perspective, it's basically the economical GDP and the high turnover in front of the shops that gonna keep giving new customers to these shops and so on. So we look at it on the broad perspective of traffic, of people themselves, how it will enhance their jobs, their businesses, and for sure the last thing is how to make it sustainable, especially with the new with our government and the vision.
Great. Gregory?
So in Hoboken, we look at parking as a revenue generator, but also as the curb space as a public good. You know, we can do more, and we can talk more about that, about how in Hoboken we use other ways to program the curb to also generate revenue and provide public benefits for residents and visitors to our city.
Felipe?
Hello. In Cali, in Colombia, we have a very big problems with the public space, with the parking, with the curbs, and we're looking as an opportunity to make relationships, and that's how we're working to give it back, that spaces to the people, not like a business space, just for the good mobility and give it back to the people. That's what I look.
And Philippe, I think you might want to mention which city you're referring to as part of your answer.
Yeah, I live mainly in Zurich and Antwerp, and in those two cities it's mainly used as both a revenue and a traffic regulation tool. In Zurich you're only allowed to park 2 hours on the curbside, and it's expensive, so people are encouraged to use something else, the train, or use off-street. And in Antwerp you're not allowed to park curbside unless you live there, but the permits are sold at a high price. So for other space, I would say it's mostly in Europe linked to bikes, making room for bikes. If you want to have large-scale bike lanes, you need to sacrifice some on-street curbside, which I think is a good thing.
Okay, great. So maybe let's go in a bit more depth, and maybe we start with you again. And with Riyadh, where we are right now, tremendous transformation happening at the moment. You're going from 0 to 100, reinventing parking on a big scale. Can you maybe talk us through the current priorities that you have for the city, the process you're going through, and maybe reflect on what are you solving for? Is it to create parking space? Is it the revenue that we mentioned? Is it maybe illegal parking and behavior? Is it thinking at the same time also about creating services as add-ons? So where are you right now in the Riyadh's transformation?
Okay, perfect. So all of you said is basically one of our priorities, but basically in Remat, we started with making a master plan where we targeted the high potential and high demand areas where we saw high congestions, we saw illegal parking, and a lot of problems that arise from bad behaviors of people using cars. It's not known that people rely solely on the cars in Riyadh, and it's the most used public transportation in Riyadh. Basically, we're trying to solve the peak places or the pain points in the city, and going forward to enhance the behaviors of how do you park properly. We need to give the curb, just like they said, as a service to the people. We started from having the assets, the parking as free and free of charge, and now we are offering it as a service, paid service. And because of that, we tried to see a huge improvement in the city, because people will gonna in the long term gonna change their behaviors towards something positive to the city. Especially that all of you said, we look at the revenues, we look at the people's shifting behaviors, and we're trying even to shift their behaviors to lean forward with the public transportations and the BRT. So all of that is, we are trying to take it into consideration, and now we're trying to actually study the full citywide master plan, especially with the rapidly growing city and the target of 2030 to actually increase the people and residents from up to 10 million. All of that gonna come with the challenges to the mobility. And we are trying to tackle it within our master plans and our strategic positioning in the municipality. Especially that we are trying to be a huge catalyst to involve the private sectors to get into our Triple P and the BOT and so on, and the Moderator.
And maybe I say a very brief follow-up question. In terms of numbers, you have some amazing numbers that you're currently working on. Maybe could you give us 1 or 2 pointers? How many parking spaces are now kind of properly coming to the market, just to have a bit of a feel for the huge transformation you're going through?
Yes, exactly. So last year we announced that we finished the first phase of off-street master plan. And we already last year also contracted with our private investor for the on-street. For the on-street, we have approximately 24,000 paid parking spaces, which is on the commercial streets, and we have approximately 400,000 managed spaces, parking spaces. And that means the following parking spaces that inside the neighborhoods adjacent to the commercial streets are being enforced and managed by enforcement laws. For the other sector, which is the off-street, we finished the master plan, which allocated almost approximate plus 40 location, diverse from surface parking to multi-story, and these 2 files are working in a synergy and kind of a cohesive kind of files that are going to support the on-street and the paid parking. So we're going to talk about 300,000 kilometers of matter of space. And for the off-street, it's approximate 13,000 paid parking.
Excellent. And Gregory, we spoke about Hoboken before, and I'm sure you will add a bit of nuance and context. But I can imagine that it's probably one of those places where everybody fights for a very finite space, where you can think of many, many ways how to use it. So how does it work in practice, and how do you try to solve for that issue?
Yeah, so Hoboken is the 4th most densely populated city in the United States. It's about 1.2 square miles and has 60,000 people, which is, by American standards, very dense. Car ownership is still relatively high. About 2/3 of residents own a car, and the city has about 9,000 on-street parking spaces, yet we issue about a little bit over 10,000 on-street parking permits. So obviously for on-street parking, every inch, every centimeter, every small unit of measurement you can think of matters. So when we're thinking about reallocating space at the curb, we have to be very precise and very considerate of other uses. And so we are working now on a plan to basically create different types of typologies for streets in the city and program the curb accordingly. For instance, in a predominantly residential block, most of the curb space will be used for resident on-street parking with some space for loading, in short-term parking and for pickup and drop-off, and obviously in a more commercial area along a transit route, there'll be more uses that support transit and in commercial high turnover parking spaces. But it's a very politically sensitive issue, parking, and it's an issue that we spend a lot of time working to solve, even though from some residents' perspective, there's really no solution that will please everyone.
Yeah. Felipe, let's maybe talk about how parking influences movement of people in the city, and what the linkage is between parking and the curbside and the public transport system with bus, metro, and other operations. So in your city, where do you see challenges that arise between when the connection doesn't fully work between these 2 things?
That's our challenge behind with the bus transportation, with the public transportation. How can we liberate spaces for the city, not only for the parking, for the people? And that's how we work to make better service. In Cali, we have the first air cable who connects the hillside with the big city, and we want to promote another cable systems. And that's how we liberate different spaces for the people. Doesn't need the cars, doesn't need the motorcycles. We have a lot of motorcycles. The people doesn't respect the warnings and anything in the streets. So we have to get them a better service, and that's how we think we work, and we're gonna be a better city to live and a better city to walk around, to get to the jobs, to get to the homes, and that's with the public system.
Yeah, thanks. Philippe, you have a different perspective on this. You, as we mentioned before, you have led APCOA, one of the biggest parking operators in the world, and maybe you can reflect briefly on the size of operations you had across many countries, many of those that you have expanded into. So from an operator's perspective, what do you feel are the things cities are asking of you as an operator? Is it specific services? Is it different ways of doing things? And then maybe as a second part of that question, what would put you or the private sector as an operator in the best position to deliver on the city's ask? What would you need?
Okay. So I've done many different industries. When I joined parking, everybody I know said, how can you join such a boring industry? Because at that time it was very simple. You put coins in a parking meter on the curbside, and if you want to use off-street, you drive in, take a ticket, you need to walk to a machine, pay, etc. This has obviously completely changed. It started in the Nordics in Europe, and with that, the demands of the cities have changed as well. So we managed curbsides also, not in all countries, but because in Germany, for instance, it's not allowed to give it to private companies. But where we did, the brief is now no capex, so no more parking meters. Everything needs to be payment system related, preferably with QR codes or cameras, so that it's automated. So cities impose the payment providers. Some cities choose one payment provider, which I think is pretty restrictive. In Netherlands, anybody can become a payment provider for parking. You register on a central database, and with certification, you go live. So they are very involved in the payment cycle. Then obviously you had EV, especially in railways, in railway systems, for instance, in UK. The advantage there was that they can invest ahead of the curve, not according to usage, but they invest 5-6 times more than what is actually used. But it encourages people to buy electrical cars. Then for the private, they could actually ask a lot more to operators. One of the restrictions, and there I'm very jealous of places like here, some of the car parks, well, most of the car parks in Europe have been there for 20, 30 years, and there are contracts that specify what you're allowed to do in that car park, and how many spaces need to be dedicated to short-term parking and to long-term parking. This is obviously very restrictive. We're in 2025, not in 2060, 65, when the car parks was built. So for instance, to do logistics, you need to get permission. If you want to implement fast chargers, it took us 18 months to get fast charger approval in the first underground garage in Berlin. If you want to do it in Frankfurt, you start again, because this is not national regulations, this is local regulation. Now, this is all happening, so you need to do pilot projects and then improve the point. But so cities could actually, in the contracts, allow for more flexibility around usage. And then obviously always the sticking points with cities is around pricing. But I think also there, dynamic pricing, etc., is now something that is accepted, and it's also being pushed by cities.
Excellent. So maybe if we go to the next round, Asayel, and we very often speak here in the Kingdom about the year 2030. So let's be a bit generous and give it a few more years. So let's say 2035, to not put ourselves under too much pressure. Can you paint a vision for us? How will parking look in 2035 in Riyadh, and what would you like to, enable and achieve by then? What needs to happen for your vision, to be successful?
Okay, perfect. So basically what we envisioned, it's not only the paid parking or the parking itself. We looked at the parking and the curb. These things are the most valuable assets to the city. The curb and the paid parking, the on-street parking, should be dynamic, should be flexible, and should be valued in an enormous way. Dynamic and flexible in matter of it should be flexible and adjust to the needs of the city. Like an example, for example, AM, it can be allocated for the logistics. We cannot even turn our heads around the e-commerce and the rising of the logistics. We see the delivery bikes everywhere in Riyadh. So providing a specific paid parking or a toll for these people or these specific services will actually enhance the service and the quality of life in general. We see that the curb and the paid parking itself should be given back to the people, as in the midnight when the parking should be turned off and not operated and active. It should be allowing small businesses to have their own shops, their own kiosks, to actually benefit the people and make them go and grow a good behavior of walking toward these kiosks. We will enhance even the EV charging, the micromobility, the accessibility towards from the neighborhoods to these parking. We're gonna try to shift gears from on-street parking to off-street parking to actually bring back the curbs and the on-street parking to the people again. So it will look amazing, inshallah.
Inshallah. Maybe the same question to Gregory and Felipe. And Gregory, if you would like to go first. We have mentioned that parking, and I think you both have mentioned that the human element in parking, the emotionality, the behaviors are something that's quite important. And we probably all have gotten pretty emotional over parking at some point in our lives, or quite often. Now, you both also have a perspective of a city, not only from the parking side, but rather from the mobility and parking side. And if we think to 2035, we could say, hey, you know, ideally no cars, everybody takes mass transit or a bike or walks, and we might do a bit more of that. Probably it's not going to work out fully. But what you would maybe think about is to influence behaviors through the parking lever, right? You might make it more expensive. You might take away capacity, and where now there's a parking, maybe there is a park or some other activity. So how do you deal with this emotional topic and with the human interface? How do you influence behaviors in a way where, you know, you don't incite a riot at the same time? So maybe it would be good to hear from both of your cities how you have a perspective on this, please.
Yeah, I'll first just say from a vision perspective, Hoboken and Riyadh look nothing alike on the ground, but I think our vision is very, very similar. And I think, you know, we have a tremendous opportunity in Hoboken to, you know, continue to support different types of mobility at the curb. Currently we have bike share parking, or bike share docking stations. We have car share spaces. And then we also have a lot of e-commerce that's creating challenges. And I think what residents oftentimes understand is that the amount of curb space that they use regularly is actually very small. You know, they're keeping their car at the curb, you know, for multiple days per week. They're using it primarily for storage, and they're moving it just for street sweeping, you know, once or twice a week. Most of the trips that they take throughout the week are by walking, by biking, or by mass transit. So what we try and do is provide those options and make sure that those options are desirable, and continue to you know, implement policies. We've started using automated enforcement, you know, automated aided enforcement to help keep bike lanes clear, bus stops clear, loading zones clear, because we've seen that, you know, just because we create a regulation for a loading zone doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be available for when people need it. And we're also trying to lean into more smart technology. We have a fully digital curb, so all of our curb regulations are completely digitized. But we're still struggling with you know, how to use that in a way that is on a citywide scale and helps benefit, you know, residents and small businesses.
Thanks, Felipe.
We came from a joyful culture. We are the world capital of the salsa, but the people think that they can do whatever they want, and that's what are we working. In 2035, we expect to have a a community train that connects three of the most important cities around Cali. We expect to give to the people unless air cables to give them back to their homes, to take the people to the works. And we expect to the public transportation is the best in Colombia, and it's the best way to move around Cali and the nearest cities. And we are not thinking about parking lots, we are thinking about sidewalks, we are thinking about public space, we are thinking about the commerce in the public space. We have a lot of poor population, and we have to give them opportunities, and we have to take the public space but organize, and take the public transportation, the best way to move around the city.
Philippe, maybe to close the panel, last question to you. We haven't spoken much about the pricing side, and especially how parking and tolling interact together. So any views that you might have, how do we see the connectivity between these two elements? Do you look at them separately? Do you look at them together? What's the best way to influence the right behavior and the right mobility in a city, from your perspective?
Look, also for private operator tolling systems are not necessarily bad if it's part of a whole philosophy. For instance, in Oslo, there's a tolling system introduced, but at the same time they decreased the amount of curbside space available and made it for other usage, which for a private operator is interesting because then the assets which are not being expanded are more valuable. So you can demand higher pricing. I think the important thing is to always think, if there's a tolling system, where are the cars gonna go that drive onto the tolling system? And if, for instance, Austria, they introduced paid parking, they then didn't think what are these cars gonna do at the barrier and all the residential areas outside of the ring of Austria Vienna were inundated with cars. And so the cities also need to think what's happening in the suburbs if you do something. But if it's all well thought through, then it all serves a purpose, better transportation, better sustainability, but also making space for the right car usage.
All right, I think at the end of this session, I would maybe just like to conclude, Philippe, with your words earlier at the beginning, that parking is a boring business. I hopefully think the panel proved otherwise, in terms of it's really an important lever, and it's actually quite a differentiated lever through which you can influence mobility in a city and behavior, commercial aspects, and many other things. So I would like to thank the panelists for the discussion. Thanks very much.